Welcome to Sportsbeat KC, the Kansas City Star Sports podcast presented by First Federal Bank. It's Wednesday, August 31st, and I'm Blair Kirchhoff. We continue to look forward to week one of the college football season with today's preview of the Kansas Jayhawks. Season 2 for head coach Lance Leipold starts Friday with a home game against Tennessee Tech, and the feeling is, well, optimistic about the season. There is a nowhere to go but up sense about KU. That's been the case for more than a decade, though. It's been an awful run for the program. Kansas hasn't won more than 3 games in a season since 2009. Still, the roster is deeper than in past years, and in Jalon Daniels, Kansas has a returning starting quarterback. On today's show, KU beat writer Gary Bedore breaks down Kansas football for 2022, and after a break, you'll hear from Leipold from his press conference earlier this week. Let's get started. Gary, it's been a long time since we talked. How you been doing?
Pretty well, pretty good. Things are going well here. I hope you're doing well. Kansas football camp, which I've been helping out on, is over. You know, now they're like the Chiefs, just in their basic practices, and they're all getting ready for Friday night. And it'll actually be interesting because, you know, normally I don't cover a lot of this, and after learning a lot of the names and meeting a lot of the players, you know, you start to wonder how these guys are going to do, because they're definitely working hard. And I know that's cliche and all that, but, you know, it's easy to mock KU football because of the past. But when you're around them for a month, you realize Lance Leipold and his staff, who are well respected, are getting after it, you know?
Yeah. You know, it may sound a little cliche because everybody works hard, but there's probably since you didn't cover them in this way previously, like every day at training camp, that sort of thing, you don't have anything to compare to when it comes to previous coaching staffs. But I have no doubt in my mind that Lance Leipold is getting the best out of his roster. He just has that's his history. I mean, you don't have as much success as he's had without maximizing the talent on the roster. Now you can argue about the level of talent on the roster, but yeah, I suspect Lance Leipold's getting the most out of his guys.
I think you're right, and I'm pretty sure it's 6 national titles at Whitewater. The guy's been on a lot of other staffs, including, I was reading, he was on Nebraska's staff once, I believe.
Yep.
And no, the thing about Lance Leipold and his staff is, if you do a quick Google search, nothing but praise, you know, from his days at Buffalo. Everybody thinks he's good, and I think he is good. I don't know the X's and O's as much, but Kansas people, I think, are happy that they have this guy. And as much as a fan doesn't want to like write off a few years and say, well, in 5 years we're going to be good, in this case you almost have to just trust that they actually got a ball coach and a good staff, great staff, whatever, and they're going to do their thing. And if you're a KU fan, you hope that in 3 years, 4 years, you're 500 or better in the league and can compete in this league, because KU, as you know, has lost a lot of football games in the Big 12 since Mangino. His final year, they were 8-5, I think. And since then, no winning seasons.
Well, that's right. A couple of things about Lance Leipold. When I think of the coaches since Mark Mangino, Kansas went one of 2 ways. They went with, either too much experience or too little experience when it came to the head coach. You know, you had Charlie Weiss and you had Les Miles, guys who were, probably looking for a last opportunity and maybe a last paycheck in their coaching careers. And you had Turner Gill and you had David Beatty, who, didn't have head coaching experience. And so they were, seems like the coaching staff was either overcooked or undercooked. And in Lance Leipold, I think they've got just the right amount of coaching experience and expertise So we'll see where it takes KU. One thing though, Gary, Mark Mangino's last year is interesting. It was 2009. They went to the bowl games in 2007, 2008, but then in 2009 they get off to that 5-0 start, and then they lose their final 7 league games, and Lou Perkins decides to fire Mark Mangino, and the program has never recovered from that. And I know Kansas fans are hoping that Lance Leipold is definitely the guy. So let's talk about this team a little bit. A lot of returning starters, including the quarterback. That's another kind of common thread through Kansas football fortunes over the past decade and then some, is not having an experienced quarterback to start the season. But they've got that this time, right, with Jalon Daniels.
Yeah, being a junior who started the last 3 games, they beat Texas on the road and played 2 close games against TCU and West Virginia. But he was not given the job, but Leipold on day 1 said he firmly expects him to start. He never said he was the starter till this week, but there was no controversy, and that's good for KU and its fans right now. Not wondering if you've got 3 quarterbacks and are any of them good? Are all of them okay?
Right.
But Jalon Daniels got the number 1 tag. According to the offensive coordinator and the head coach, he's had a good camp, and they've made it a point to praise extensively the backup Jason Bean, who started 9 games a year ago, really fast. I mean, he rushed for a lot of yards, but they've pointed out many times at these interview sessions that Bean has played his best ball the last month than any time at Kansas. He's only been here a couple years, but they think they got 2 highly acceptable quarterbacks, and Daniels was named a captain, and the players vote for that. So they obviously like him. Talking to him, really nice guy and exuberant. And if football was like basketball, where you get to see the faces and all that on the field, the fans would love Jalon Daniels. So they think they're fine at quarterback. Not to jump ahead, but these guys have 4 running backs and maybe 5 that they think are all really good, or, Big 12 caliber. Devin Neal out of Lawrence High gained 700 yards last year, but he's a sophomore. And then you bring in Kai Thomas of Topeka High, who I didn't realize was the 2nd leading rusher in Kansas high school history.
Wow.
And he comes from Minnesota, the university, with a teammate, Doug, the receiver, Emilian, I think is how you pronounce it. But Kai Thomas gained yards last year, 800 or so. But in a very interesting thing where we always look for angles and if the fans want something to get excited about, you got 2 guys from Lawrence and Topeka who might be Kansas's starting backfield, and you'd say big deal because Kansas is no good. Well, if they get better, what a deal. 2 guys from this part of the state, Devin Neal and Kai Thomas, and supposedly both have had really good camps. They brought in Sevion Morrison from Nebraska, running back. Haven't heard much about how he's doing, but they do include him in the group. And Daniel Highshaw is this big, strong running back who everybody says plows through people. So you got the quarterbacks and these 4 running backs, at least 4 running backs, to hopefully for the KU be an interesting thing for the fans to watch.
Yeah, and in describing both the quarterback and the running back positions, Gary, you bring up a point that I thought Lance Leipold emphasized when he spoke to the media earlier this week that I thought was really interesting when he talked about the depth chart and the oars that are on the depth chart. What that means is the depth chart is where the players by position are listed, the starter and then the second team and then the third team player. And in some cases, when a coach can't decide, or it hasn't been decided that a player, is either the starter or the second team, or he's on the second team or the third team, you list an or by their name. So you've got, we know Jalon Daniels is going to be the starting quarterback, but if there was a really strong competition, it would say Jalon Daniels or Jason Bean. We know it's Daniels, but that's what I'm, just as an example. Well, the ors are different for Kansas this year. With the ors on the Kansas roster, the guys who are on the second team could possibly be first team players, which means they have depth. And I imagine it's been a while since the Kansas football team has had the kind of depth that it needs to compete in the Big 12. And I just thought that was an interesting comment from Lance Leipold earlier this week. So let's go to the offensive line. You got 4 returning starters, and so when we talk about the running game and the offense, there's some hope there too.
Yeah, they do have an NFL prospect at tackle in Earl Bostic Jr., 6'6", 310, leads the line. Really good guy to talk to. Acts the leadership role really well. Says he really wants to help turn this thing around. But he's your guy there with center Mike, I believe it's pronounced Nowitzki. He's been showing up at most of the media sessions. Another leader type guy, 6'5", 300. So those two guys, one of the guys was banged up. Not one of those two, but one of the projected starters, I believe, was banged up. But I was talking to David Lawrence, a former KU offensive lineman who gets to go to practice all the time, and he thinks that they are much, much improved on the line, and he watches those guys a lot. So I don't know. I think that's a huge question mark still, because we're talking about a team that hasn't won much at all. And if you talk about strengths or weaknesses or question marks, the line is a question mark, because Kansas normally gets steamrolled in these games. And are these guys way better with these returnees? Like you said, they got a lot of returnees. Hit the weight room hard. Supposedly the weight coach is great. We'll see. I would call the line a question mark though right now.
Okay. And then Mason Fairchild returns as tight end. He was, had a good season last year, a good player. So what about wide receiver? What do the Jayhawks have around at wide receiver?
Well, Kwame Lassiter, who got cut by the Bengals, but maybe will make the practice squad, is gone. And Trevor Wilson is the guy that has the legal problems and won't be heard of for a while with his he's been suspended as his court dates, happen, and that takes forever normally. So you lose those two guys, which is pretty big. But what do you got back? Lawrence Arnold is a returnee. They got Luke Grimm as a returnee, and they have Quentin Skinner, 6'5", who everybody's excited about. Now, the coordinator has hinted that these running backs could be on the field at the same time, a lot of them. And I could sure envision, whichever one of these receivers has good hands, splitting out and being receiver as well. But because of what's going on at receiver, I think, again, that's a question mark. I think we don't know. I would say that'll be interesting, because Luke Grimm and Arnold are pretty good, but we're trying to see if KU has Big 12 caliber studs, and I don't know, but question mark on the receiver position, I'd say.
I was going to say maybe the least proven part of the offense.
Yeah,
right.
That's a good way to word it.
KU. Okay, let's switch over to the defense. A bunch of returning starters there too. Among the notables, Kenny Logan Jr. at safety, and who's getting some preseason all-conference run, and linebacker Gavin Potter. So those are the names, I think maybe the most familiar names on defense. Yeah. But this is where Kansas may have found an answer in the transfer portal when it comes to the defensive line.
Yeah. Lonnie Phelps of Miami of Ohio, you keep hearing about how well he's doing and what a good pass rusher he is. And he's the guy that had good stats at Miami, a lot of sacks last year. And he met the media one day, real boisterous guy, not cocky, but funny and wants to get after it. And yesterday, the defensive coordinator, Borland, I've kind of gotten this sense that Lonnie Phelps, might be the superstar in the waiting. And I asked Borland at the end about Phelps if he could be special, and he acknowledged that he's really looking forward to seeing what he does under the bright lights, because it sounds like this guy has had quite the camp and has the kind of pass rush you want. Nobody knows how these guys are going to play once the real games start, but from Miami of Ohio, Lonnie Phelps, senior, or no, he's a junior, I guess. Big time possibility there.
Okay, so one to keep your eye on, Lonnie Phelps. All right, Gary, let's we're going to hear from Lance Leipold here in a moment from his press conference earlier this week. But before you and I stop our chat or end our chat, I wanted to ask you about a little bit of news that came out at KU this week, and that is, looks like the athletic administration is studying a possibility of facility upgrades or doing something with the stadium. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, they're accepting bids now from sports design companies till, I think it goes till September 13th. And that would be a step that proves once again they're going full steam ahead. Included in the description of what they want is an improved football stadium, I think is the way it read. So they would also, it sounds like, have some kind of convention center. I don't know if it's in the stadium itself or what, maybe in the stadium itself, but it wouldn't be a tear down. I think it would be a renovation, but they're taking bids. I don't know what the status of their fundraising is. Even with them just taking bids doesn't mean the project is often official, because they're going to need money. And I think Texas Tech's renovation that was announced is $200 million. So Goff has been talking to donors, we know, and obviously they do want this to happen now. So this bid thing will happen, and maybe he's got the money. We'll see. He's had to work hard since getting here, because he knows for so many reasons they have to improve the stadium with realignment possibilities and all that stuff. So that's where that stands. They're taking bids.
So, yeah, Travis Goff, the athletic director, accepting bids for design purposes. And, Gary, you've been, even though you haven't covered football as a primary beat, I know you've been going to games and covering home games for decades.
Yeah.
And I've been going over there for decades as well. And there have been upgrades to the Memorial Stadium, right? The press box that we sit in is certainly not what the original press box was.
Yeah.
You and I started going over there, and heck, people should remember, you don't have to be, too old to remember when they had a track going around that stadium, that was built with a track around it. It only came out during I think it was Charlie Weiss who wanted the running track out of there. So that's happened. And there have been upgrades and improvements. There have also been talks of, just wholesale changes, right? Building a luxury suite on the opposite side of I guess that would be the east side of the stadium, opposite the press box. And And that never happened, never got off the ground. With each new athletic director, it seems like there are big plans for Memorial Stadium improvement. But my thought is, I'm not sure what needs to change in with the stadium to radically to make it a modern place, for lack of a better word. I'm not sure what needs to happen. It's a stadium it opened in, was it 1921 or 22, something like that, and it has served Kansas pretty well. The setting is marvelous. It's one of the best settings that I've been in. And, I guess a stadium these days, you have to maximize your revenue potential out of it. That's the big thing. If you've got to make money from your stadium, and if that's the case, then Kansas needs to do what it has to do. But I hope that in making changes, it doesn't lose the charm of a football stadium that's more than as much as a century old.
Yeah, I agree. Have you ever been to Madison, Wisconsin?
I have been to Camp Randall. Yeah.
Is that stadium kind of what you would want Memorial Stadium to be with their renovation? I mean, that thing was old, right?
Yeah, it was old, and they've done a nice job at Wisconsin. And well, one of the reasons is they fill the stadium every home game, and there's 75,000 plus. And their student section is incredible, right? They do the jump around after the third quarter, and it's an amazing atmosphere. And in the best of worlds, Kansas would fill its, like it did in 2007, the Orange Bowl year. You remember going to those home games that year, and having to get to the stadium hours before kickoff just to make sure you could navigate the traffic. And it was an incredible place. It was a beautiful place when it's filled, and you get a winning football team. So I'll tell you, the stadium that I've always thought was a model for the size and scope of Kansas is the University of Utah Stadium. That is I think it seats about 45,000. The seats are closer to the field than in most places. The atmosphere is terrific. I don't know from a structural standpoint or a financial standpoint, it does all it can do, but I just thought the atmosphere of the games that I've been to at Utah are tremendous. So I don't know. You hope, Kansas, you hope maximizes its, whatever it wants to get out of a football stadium. And I'd be curious to see what designs come back for this. And is it a mixed use? That's what stadiums are going to now, not just a stadium, but commercial development around it, and even residential development around it as well. The Chiefs have hinted at that. If the Royals move to downtown, could Arrowhead Stadium become one of those types of mixed use development places? So interesting times, and we'll just see what Kansas comes up with in exploring the new stadium, or not new stadium, but renovated Memorial Stadium possibility. So, all right, Gary, great conversation as always. Like I said, we're going to take a break now, and when we come back, you will hear from KU head football coach Lance Leipold.
Buying your first home is a huge milestone, but the journey there can be confusing. First Federal Bank of Kansas City is here to make it simple. After nearly a century of serving the KC community, our loan advisors have experience in every type of housing market. With a short phone call, we can give you a free rate quote and talk through loan options. No pressure, no obligation. The road to home ownership can be simple with First Federal Bank. Get started with a free quote at ffbkc.com/homes. First Federal Bank of Kansas City, because banking is personal. Member FDIC, equal housing lender.
Hey, this is Blair. There are several ways to access the Star Sports section. Let me tell you about a couple of them. There is Sports Pass. For $12.99 a month, you get unlimited digital access to all of the Star Sports content, including beat writing, columns, features, pretty much everything we write. The deal renews monthly until you tell us to cancel. For $159.99 a year, you get everything the Star has to offer digitally, including sports and the e-edition. Go to kansascity.com and drop down to the bottom of the page where it says Start a Subscription for more information. Your support has never been more important. As always, thanks for reading and listening.
Good morning. obviously it's game week, and excited to get the thing going. Probably just to follow up briefly on last week's off-field incident, just follow up on the releases that were sent. Obviously, well, first of all, I'll just say Trevor Wilson will be suspended indefinitely until there's further progress in what's happening there. So the charges were dropped against Tanaka Scott. He returned to practice today, and he will be suspended for the first game. Just real quickly, definitely disappointed, but disappointed that those young men are in that, put themselves in that situation, but equally disappointed in myself. As a head coach, it's my responsibility and put out messages and to put it on young men to make great decisions and wherever it may be and wherever that takes place. So obviously I haven't done enough in my role to prevent those situations, and I'll continue to work to be better. It's game week. It's something that we've been, I told the team the other day is, you think back to, last January. It's really January when you return after the semester, and everybody's excited. They put all those long hours in, all the time in the weight room, all the things we ask, and then you start here in 1st of August, and battle the heat and all the other things you got to go through, the long days, all the preparation, and now you get a chance to, we only get 12 of these. There's other sports, you get 40, 60 other opportunities, play 20 minutes later or something like that. We get 12 of these, and we have to make sure we make the most of them. And we were off yesterday, practiced Saturday, we're in full pads today, and pleased as we started really in-depth prep. Tennessee Tech, anytime, we look at last year's opener as a battle of the wire. Anytime you play an FCS school, sometimes not as much knowledge of them. They have a new coordinator on offense, program that continues to build a bit, steady throughout. So you never know exactly what you're going to see. You can see it all the way through these 0-week games, that a lot of different things can happen in college football. So being sound in all three phases will be very important, and important for us to get off to a good start. Excited to be playing at home, of course, as well. David Booth, Kansas Memorial Stadium. Encouraging a great crowd to come out. I know last year in our opener in the fourth quarter, our student section and fans were definitely a factor in that and creating energy, and we hope we get that from the opening kick. I'll open it for questions.
Coach, how do you look at the mystery of that first game? I'm sure you're going to come out. We can show things you have, the opponents have to see at the same time. With your coordinator, they may look entirely different.
Right. Yeah, and you have to be fundamentally sound and be prepared for adjustments on both sides. And I think throughout our careers and things, you look at it, being at a group of 5 school before this, and you get a chance to play Power 5 schools, go into bigger stadiums, much like FCS schools that have a chance. This is their chance to make an impact. I'm sure there's great excitement and energy for them to get their season started, and again to come into a Big 12 stadium in that, I'm sure they're going to be more than ready to play.
It's time we talked to you. Armage Reed Adams wasn't available. What's his status looking like for
He's
this week?
practicing. We'll see right now, but he practiced full today, did a little bit on Saturday, so I would expect him to be available.
Obviously, they're listed as an or, Armage and Dominic Puniar. So what do those two kind of look like in terms of the battle, and I guess what are you going to be looking for the guy that's
Well, it'll
going
be
to
a
start?
battle all the way across. Some of that, the battle is health. Sometimes the battle is, splitting, and guys are going to get opportunities to play. got a lot of oars on that 2 deep, more than we ever have before, because a lot of guys deserve to be on that, and they're going to get opportunities to play. Sometimes an oar is a matter that you don't know if you have one, and so you're going to try to split it. I like where our oars are on the depth chart right now, meaning we have guys that are going to be capable and give us depth and quality production.
That'll do it for today. Thanks to our Sportsbeat KC staff of Monty Davis, Randy Mason, Jeff Rosen, and Chris Fickett, and to our sponsor, First Federal Bank. Their website is ffbkc.com. Tip of the cap to Gary Bedore for sharing his insights on KU football. Today's morning sports edition was full of college football previews, plus baseball, NFL, U.S. Open tennis, and much more. Check it out at liveedition.kansascity.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon with another Sportsbeat KC.